Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Criterion Connection. I'm Wade,
And I'm Joe.
and we're here to do a movie from 1942 by a man called Orson Welles. It's called The Magnificent Ambersons. Sorry, it's plural, a whole family. It's yeah, it's an Orson Welles picture, and it's got a whole cast of characters, like it always does, and it's a tale of rise and fall. This one's kind of a not really a rise, but there's definitely a fall with characters in this. Well, no, there's a rise in a character.
It's based on a book, first and foremost.
Yes.
And it's about. Um, it, there's a lot going on. There's a change in society. Um, with. I wouldn't call it the Industrial Revolution, but the revolution in machines and having, automobiles is a big thing.
Yes.
And basically the whole world's changing in that respect. And then you have the Ambersons, which is, a symbol of old aristocratic, you know, old money, if you will,
Yeah.
versus, Mr. Morgan's, adaptability and coming into new money. Like and it's never insinuated that he never had money. Like he might still be part of that first class from back in the day, but he changes with the times rather than the Ambersons like George, who wants things the way they were decades ago.
Yeah, George. He's kind of a piece of trash, and then Eugene is like more. He's more progressive. He can adapt. And George, he couldn't because he was kind of raised in that environment. I had the idea that Eugene was never really raised like George was, like in a very kind of silver spoon kind of thing.
Yeah, and that's kind of one of the major points that the movie makes is um, is that Isabel holds true to that old values where Morgan, in a bit of loss of self-control, probably, when he talks about when he was a young man he was a lot like George. It's talking about that one mistake he made where he got really drunk and messed up this orchestra for the love of his life, and she never forgave him for it.
Yeah.
And she chooses, you know, a different suitor rather than to be the one that humiliated her. Because back in the day, it's all about appearances, and he changed his ways immediately. Whereas, because she forsakes love for status, um, they talk about how she'll be a good wife, but there won't be a love in that marriage. And Georgie's gonna get all the love, and he's gonna get spoiled rotten.
Oh, is he?
Yeah, and that's what ends up happening.
I mean, that hair, that the George hair when he was a kid, wow. And everyone's like this, and this everyone's like this little brat's gonna get his comeuppance. He's gonna get what's coming to him. And well, that's the movie.
And it takes the whole movie for it. I mean, it's very much like like almost a reverse It's a Wonderful Life. You know what I mean? And yeah, this is talked about as one of the greatest movies ever made. Yeah, so there's, this is Orson Welles right off of Citizen Kane. He still has a lot of the same crew and some of the same cast. And this is a very small cast. This is like his radio, uh, his radio play cast. Joseph Cotton's there. Uh, Richard Beckett, all these guys. Um, and speaking of which, Joseph Cotton, super charming guys, in this movie. And then I got to give props Tim Holt. He plays grown-up Georgie, and man, does he play an indignant little shit.
Yeah, he's like a little he lives up to his childhood. He's the same. He didn't grow out of that. It's not a phase. He didn't grow out of it.
Yeah, and he's very much like all about status, and he's like, well, we have money, so I don't have to do anything. All I have to do is enjoy it and give to charity and look nice for everybody.
He was also very controlling, like with his relationships, like his mother. Just like you're not seeing him, even on like Isabel's spoiler deathbed. Like he's like you're not seeing her. Like he's basically saying like you're not gonna see Eugene. You're not gonna see anyone.
And part of me thinks that's the beginning of the change because he says it's not a good time, and I know Morgan receives that as you're still trying to get in the way and control, your mother's life. But when Fanny and Jack, Isabel's siblings, or last living siblings, they come down and they're like, no, Eugene, like, it's really not a good time. But, it turns out Isabel would have loved to have seen him. And I think Georgie in that moment is starting to realize like how important Eugene was to her. It's not like a complete flip, but I think it's like that's what gets the gears going in the proper direction.
It's the cracking of the wall.
Yeah, he's getting there, and then when things get worse and worse, they're running out of money. Jack leaves. It's just him and Fanny, and then they don't have enough money to live in a boarding house, let alone the mansion. Like, he's understanding, more responsibility, and sure, he still has this kind of indignance with him when he goes to the law office, but he's like, at this point, he's trying to do the right thing.
Yeah, he's realized that he can control everything. He can have power and money over everything, but he can't have power over time. Yeah, like with the Major Amberson, he passes away, and then it just seems like the old guard's kind of passing away, and I think George is like, you can't. I think that's when he realizes, oh, the kind of like a realization, like it's not all about this.
The one thing that really clues me in is when he's praying at his mother's bed.
Yes.
After she had passed, and that's what like I think is the beginning of that change, which is that comeuppance.
That there's one chilling line when Orson Welles says Orson Welles is the narrator of this. He says his comeuppance, and no one was there to see it.
And that's like, what because the theme throughout the beginning of the movie is everybody wants to be there to see George get his comeuppance, and in the end, it's so bad that like nobody got to see it.
Yeah,
it is in a deep dark place where he is at that point.
Yeah, and then to me, like I don't like the ending is very. They use the ending of the novel, where like like I think I'm just a masochist, and I kind of wish it just ended there. Just like it just ended depressingly.
Just the good old not so great ending. Like, here we go. Yeah, he basically, the hint is that he takes care of him.
Yeah.
And part of it, he feels responsible for, obviously. Not only, was this like weird relationship between him and his mother, Morgan, and Georgie's mother, but like it's also an automobile accident that causes, that last bit of, trauma. And you have that scene at the dinner where Georgie says that automobiles are just a nuisance and they should never have been made. And everybody, and Morgan as well, takes it as an insult, but Morgan, trying to be diplomatic, says his piece. He's like, he could be right in another few years, but this is just where we're at now.
Yeah,
You
it
know?
is a nuisance for some people.
Yeah, and then it's an automobile accident that puts Georgie out of commission.
Yeah, and also, that's what put him out of commission family wise, because the automobile revolution and stuff like that started happening, and Ambersons could not adapt, and that kind of was like the fall. That started the fall. So the automobiles have really been like not the greatest for George.
The movie's good. Like the plot and the story is good and makes sense, given the characters and their individual motivations. And there's not as much, at least I didn't pick up on as much like technical marvel that Citizen Kane has. But there is like a really great tracking shot where Georgie takes Fanny and they come out of like, they seem to walk through like a whole like a couple doorways, and the camera just follows them the whole time perfectly.
Yeah,
Like that's some really cool like camera work. But nothing really stood out to me like with, the, there's a superimposed picture at one point of Georgie's face. It's like almost like a reflection. But other than that, like nothing like Citizen Kane, like where they'll have, you know, they were able to have things happening in the foreground, middle ground, background, and
yeah,
all in focus. But I mean, you still have Stanley Cortez as your director of photography.
yeah. I feel like yeah, I hate comparing movies to like I hate comparing movies to their like other movies, but Citizen Kane, it's really hard to kind of compete with Citizen Kane. It's kind of unfair, It's I think he was did not want to go that in depth and detailed as he did with Citizen Kane.
As much as I'm with you with not comparing to Citizen Kane with most movies, if there is a movie to compare to Citizen Kane, it would be this one. Literally, the next movie he did, like a year later,
Yeah,
or 2 years later. But it's still like,
and it has still similar themes of Citizen Kane. A rising kind of medium, like you have the newspapers, and then you have the automobiles. You have the rise and fall of characters. You see them, and they're down. The kind of idea of childhood.
yeah, he's really playing with the idea of character arcs and seeing where that takes you and how, you know, it, it's, he's looking at radical changes in technology and society and seeing how that affects, you know, the values of a family or a person and what it does to people.
And this movie also has an interesting ending to where like they have like kind of like the radio play kind of ending, like I am North Orson Welles starring, and it has all the characters.
Yeah, he narrates all the credits.
This was a Mercury production.
Yeah, like I said, Stanley Cortez is his director of photography, one of the greatest of all time. And then here's another one. I don't know if you caught the name. Robert Wise was like an assistant director.
Yeah,
The guy who directed West Side Story, the original Haunting, like
yeah,
just an all-time talent in his own right.
yeah.
And it's just it's amazing to think about like who was involved in this movie and how all their careers have turned out.
Yeah, and there was also like some like like the studio issues that we'd be here forever talking about. We'd be here forever talking about Orson Welles and studios because boy, they didn't like each other.
The reason why he stopped really directing movies.
Yeah.
But that's one of the big things with this one is that there's 40 minutes of cut footage that is forever lost. RKO cut it early on, and then a fire destroyed it, I believe. And I believe they changed the ending. Like they forced him to change the ending into a happier ending.
Yeah.
Like it probably.
Oh, okay.
Knowing Orson Welles, he probably stopped it at the automobile accident.
Because here's the thing: it felt like that was the end.
And then they tack on that. Oh yeah, well, it looks like we've got. Isabel had me, come in and take the boy under shelter. Yeah, all that stuff.
Yeah, like that's why I was like, it just felt weird. Like, as it faded to black. Oh, here comes credit. Yeah, here comes credits. No, oh, okay.
But in my opinion, like there's 40 minutes. This is an hour and a half movie, so almost another 50% could have been on this. I don't know what it would have been, and if it would have made this movie any better.
I think it, like, it was only like 88 minutes, I believe, and it felt like it was 2 hours because it takes its time and it's slow. It takes its time. I can't imagine our 40 minutes of that.
I don't know what he would have done. I don't know what exactly it would have been, unless it's more of the story between when Isabel and George leave and go traveling. Like, if you have bits of that storyline, or if you have bits of Eugene Morgan and his continuous rise, with the automobile industry. I really don't know.
Yeah.
And that's what's really surprising to me. It's one of those things where it's like, yeah, it sucks that it's not there and we don't have the option of seeing it, but I really don't know what it could have added.
Yeah, I agree.
And that's the problem I have with Citizen Kane a lot, is that it seems to drag at times, and I almost feel like that's what would have happened in this movie if you add that extra 40 minutes of footage in.
Yeah.
That it's going to drag and be a little bit more over self-indulgent. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's hard to judge it based on that, but based on what we've seen, I mean, it's a good movie. And I'd be willing to check out the novel myself, but the movie's good and the performances are great. I don't really have nothing terrible to complain about, other than I just don't know how audiences would respond to it at this point.
Yeah.
That's all. It's the same thing. It's the same problem I have with Citizen Kane. Like, I don't think audiences now would respond to it in the in a positive way, like back then, or people really into story or really into the technical aspects of film.
Well, Citizen Kane was made in 2020. The whole room trashing scene, everything would be CGI. Explosions happening, So, Joe, big question: buy, rent, or skip?
I think it's a rent stream situation. I think it's worth watching. But it's one of these movies that if I'm talking to a cinephile, I'm gonna have a different conversation with them than with an average movie goer, movie watcher. Um, and it's the same. Unfortunately, it's the same kind of conversation I have with Citizen Kane, except I think this one, um, although a little less dramatic or melodramatic, I should say, I think this one would be easier for an average movie watcher to um, appreciate, just because it's shorter and it kind of gets to the point a little quicker.
But I'm in the same boat. Would not be like you got to buy it right now.
And it's a shame because I do want to, sit here and say it's one of the greatest movies ever made, and it very much could be. It's just, you know, to me, just like Citizen Kane, which is another one in that same boat, it's like it depends on who I'm talking to.
Yeah. So that's our thoughts on Magnificent Ambersons. Let us know in the comments section below. Also, want to say Magnificent Ambersons just sounds like a Wes Anderson movie, doesn't it? The name. I feel like Wes Anderson would make a movie called Magnificent Ambersons. It'd be a Wes Anderson film. Let us know in the comment section below what films we should do. What's your feelings in this movie? What's another Orson Welles movie that's in the Criterion collection or not in the Criterion collection right now? Let us know in the comment section below. Subscribe, share, all of that. And next week is episode 150. So that's fun and exciting. Tune in for that. And I guess we have to close it the only way. Magnificent Ambersons review discussion has to end with an Orson Welles impression. Criterion Connection. Magnificent Ambersons, starring Wade and starring
Joe.
This has been a Mint Condish Productions.